Marcus Chen rubbed his tired eyes as he made his way through the dimly lit corridors of the Harmony Station, humanity's first successful diplomatic outpost in the Andromeda sector. After 18 grueling hours negotiating trade agreements between 3 different alien species, all he wanted was to collapse onto his bunk and sleep for the next 12 hours. The human quarters were located in Section C7, designed specifically to accommodate Earth's gravitational and atmospheric preferences. As the only human diplomat stationed this far from home, Marcus had grown accustomed to the solitude. The other species kept to their own environmental zones, and interactions were typically limited to formal meetings in the neutral conference areas. He palmed the door sensor to his quarters, expecting to find his small but comfortable room exactly as he'd left it. Instead, he froze in the doorway. Curled up in the center of his bunk was the tiniest alien he'd ever seen, no larger than a human child, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the low lighting. Delicate, translucent wings folded against her back, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. She wore what appeared to be a torn and dirty flight suit, several sizes too large for her petite frame. Marcus recognized her species immediately. A Zephyrian, one of the most reclusive races in known space. They were notorious for their extreme shyness around other species, particularly humans, whom they considered giants. Seeing one this far from Zephyrian space was unusual enough. Finding one unconscious in his bed was unprecedented. "Hey," Marcus whispered softly, not wanting to startle her. "Are you okay?" The little alien's large, opalescent eyes snapped open, and she scrambled backward against the wall, making a high-pitched chittering sound that his universal translator couldn't quite process. Her wings fluttered anxiously, and Marcus could see she was trembling. "It's all right," he said, raising his hands slowly to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Marcus. What's yours?" For a long moment, she stared at him with those enormous eyes, her tiny chest rising and falling rapidly. Finally, she managed to speak in heavily accented standard. "Zira, I am sorry. I did not mean to intrude in your dwelling space." Marcus noticed she was shivering despite the station's regulated temperature. Her flight suit was indeed damaged, with several tears that suggested she'd been through some kind of ordeal. More concerning was the way she favored her left wing, keeping it closer to her body. "Are you injured?" Marcus asked, taking a careful step closer. "And what are you doing so far from Zephyrian space?" Zira's composure crumbled, and she began speaking rapidly in her native tongue before switching back to standard. "My transport was attacked by raiders near the neutral zone. I managed to escape in a pod, but it was damaged. Your station's tractor beam brought me in, but I was afraid to make contact. Humans are so large, and your species has a reputation for—" She stopped herself, looking embarrassed. "For being aggressive?" Marcus finished gently. "I understand why you'd be scared, but you're safe here, I promise. Let me help you." Despite her obvious fear, exhaustion won out, and Zira allowed Marcus to examine her injured wing. It wasn't broken, but several of the delicate membrane sections were torn. He carefully cleaned the wounds with supplies from his medical kit, marveling at how someone so small could have survived a raider attack and crash landing. "You're incredibly brave," he told her as he worked. "Most beings twice your size wouldn't have made it through what you did." Zira's eyes widened with surprise. "Brave? I am the smallest of my clutch siblings, the weakest. That is why I was chosen for the diplomatic courier mission. Expendable." Marcus felt a surge of anger at whoever had sent this tiny being on such a dangerous journey alone. "You're not expendable. You survived something that would have killed others, and you had the intelligence to find shelter when you needed it. That's not weakness. That's strength." As the station's artificial night cycle deepened, Marcus faced a dilemma. Protocol dictated that he should report the stowaway to station security, but Zira was clearly traumatized and needed rest more than bureaucratic processing. The medical bay would be too clinical and frightening for someone of her species. "You can stay here tonight," he decided. "I'll sleep on the floor. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to get you safely home." But Zira shook her head vigorously. "This is your resting place. I cannot claim it. Among my people, to take another's sleeping space without permission is a grave offense." "I'm giving you permission," Marcus said with a smile. "Besides, you were here first." As he arranged some spare blankets on the floor, Marcus felt a gentle touch on his arm. Zira was looking up at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "In Zephyrian culture," she said quietly, "when someone offers their sleeping space to a wounded stranger, it creates a bond of protection. The host becomes responsible for the guest's safety until they are healed." "Then I accept that responsibility," Marcus replied without hesitation. What happened next surprised them both. As Marcus settled onto his makeshift bed on the floor, he felt the mattress dip slightly. Zira had moved to the edge of the bunk, her small hand reaching down toward him. "Among my people," she whispered, "the protected must remain close to the protector. It is tradition." Marcus understood. Despite her fear of humans, despite their vast size difference, Zira's instincts were telling her to stay near the one being who had shown her kindness. He carefully moved back to the bunk, lying on the far edge to give her space. But throughout the night, Zira gradually moved closer, drawn by the warmth and security his presence provided. Her tiny frame pressed against his side, one delicate hand clutching his shirt. Her wings, previously held tight with pain and fear, gradually relaxed and spread slightly across his chest. Marcus lay awake for hours, careful not to move and disturb her rest. He marveled at the trust this small being had placed in him, despite everything her species believed about humans. In her sleep, Zira murmured occasionally in her native language, and her translator rendered fragments. Safe, warm, protector. When morning came, Marcus woke to find Zira still curled against him, but her trembling had stopped entirely. Her wing was already showing signs of healing, and the terrified expression had been replaced by peaceful sleep. As she gradually woke, Zira looked up at him with those remarkable eyes, no longer filled with fear, but with something that might have been wonder. "Thank you," she said softly. "I have never felt so secure." Marcus smiled. "That's what humans do best. We protect those who need it, no matter how small, no matter how different." Later, as they worked together to contact the Zephyrian embassy and arrange for her safe return home, Marcus reflected on the night. In a galaxy often divided by differences in size, culture, and biology, sometimes the most profound connections were formed not through grand gestures, but through simple acts of kindness. And sometimes the smallest beings showed the greatest courage of all.